Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Portress, and I'm joined by Sweet Shanza Kovacs from the internet.
Oh, there's going to be story time with Sweet Shanzi with that opening song. Ask me about it later.
Will do. And he's not David Bowie, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and I don't think that lady was really blind. There were some subtle clues if you pay attention.
Subtle, very subtle clues. So we hope you've showered up this week because we are watching the Toxic Avenger from 1984. But before we get into that review, we do want to say why we're reviewing it and do want to say a thank you then to the people that make this show happen and support us over at patreon.com/HMP. Those amazing, generous people get the pre-show, post-show, and of course the Dinger Zone. But along with all of that, you also get to vote on a movie that we watch each month, and there are actually 2 of these this month. But this is the first Patreon vote that you guys voted for, and Toxic Avenger narrowly beat out Wynonna Earp. It was a barn burner there up until the last minute, and all of a sudden Toxic Avenger just kind of pulled out into the front.
Let me ask you this, Adam. How much racism is in Wynonna Earp?
I'm guessing tons, because isn't that a CW show? You know what they're known for.
No, it's sci-fi, man. How dare you?
Then it's even worse, because they got people like from all kinds of planets and stuff at that point.
Because the racism in this, mwah, that's some good racism.
But if you missed out on this vote, fear not. There will be another Patreon vote at the end of this month as well, so there's still time to get in on that action and all the other cool stuff. We do want to say a big thank you this month over here at the Rockin' In at the $40 level. We got Tim the Longhauler, Sir Derrick, Slick Derrick, the Night Bard, still rocking in at that $40 level, boys. Thank you. And coming in at the $20 level, we got Curvaceous, Spider-Zee, Alex, and Matthew coming in at that as well. Gentlemen, thank you. And, of course, a huge thanks to the rest of you. Most of you are coming in at that $5 level a month. You guys are the backbone of our support and everything. And if you've yet to sign up, and you can sign up at any level. It doesn't really matter because all the perks are available to you. We just that whatever value that you get out of this show week after week, month after month, year after year, whatever all that's worth to you, just put that in a number form, give it to us. Everybody gets money to, corporations and stuff. We're talking about the Toxic Avenger and stuff like that. We give money to corporations, people that don't care about you any way, shape, or form. We're all guilty of it, but even if it's not this show, I encourage everybody, just support independent creators of all kinds. Put your time, talent, treasure to people that you know exist and that care about you. And that's what we do. I do. I talk with all of you people all the time, and you know it. So if you would like to vote on what we watch, get the pre-show, post-show, and Dinger Zone, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join today at any rate, however big or small. Like I said, just make it something that's meaningful to you. And if you're on the Breeze or Sphinx app, man, hit those boosts there. We really appreciate for that as well. All right, let's get into it, boys. Here is the trailer for the Toxic Avenger.
Meet little Melvin. He's a 90-pound weakling. Everyone hated Melvin.
I'm gonna take this mop and shove it down your throat.
They teased him.
I want to do it with you.
Okay.
They taunted him. They tormented him until he had a horrifying accident and fell into a vat of nuclear waste, transforming little Melvin into a hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. Melvin became the Toxic Avenger, the first superhero born out of nuclear waste.
Holy shit! I don't know what it was, but it saved my life. All right, everybody, drop your tacos or I'll blow your brains out.
The vandals and the perverts had their way with the little people of Tromaville until the Toxic Avenger ripped them apart. The Toxic Avenger. His face is so terrifying. We can't show it to you now. You'll have to see the movie for yourself. The Toxic Avenger can bend steel with his bare hands.
Oh, we're only kidding. Get it?
Leap small cars in a single bound. He crushes drug pushers. Smashes hit-and-run drivers. For incredible, explosive action, you must see the Toxic Avenger. He's a different kind of hero. The Toxic Avenger is coming to your town. Look out.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for The Toxic Avenger. Here's a plot line from IMDb. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. Tromaville has a monstrous new hero. The Toxic Avenger is born when a meek mop boy, Melvin, falls into a vat of toxic waste. Now evildoers will have a lot to lose. This is directed by Michael Hers and Lloyd Kaufman, who is actually credited as Sam Weil? Sure. With that said, you guys know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Bruce, Toxic Avenger, what do we got?
Well, 1991 was the year Toxic Avenger showed up in Marvel Comics. Issue number 1 was written by Doug Minch, had art by Rod Ramos, and featured characters with names like Mrs. Junko and Ebony with an I. It has a pretty good cover, but I don't have any idea what's inside because I never read it. I saw a copy on sale for $50, but I'm just not that dedicated to my craft.
Oof.
Now, issue 4 was titled Lethal Linda and the Legend of Sludgeface, so I must confess that did pique my curiosity a little bit, but not enough to figure out a way to actually read it. The triumphant final issue, issue 11, was titled Nukin' Weasels, so I figure I got a pretty good idea about what the plot is to that story. I did find a photograph of Stan Lee with one arm around the Toxic Avenger and his other arm around Spider-Man, but I was surprised I couldn't find any scholarly analysis of the comic. I did find one review, and that review stated, quote, "It absolutely blows my mind that somehow, some way, the Toxic Avenger, a no-budget splatter movie whose highlights include children having their heads squished by drunk drivers and morbidly obese men having their intestines yanked out of their stomach cavities, was transformed into a children's property. The only reasonable explanation being cocaine and a whole lot of it." Now, as for the reviewer's opinion on the content of the comics, they said, quote, "I'd go as far as to say it's actually a pretty fun and inventive take on Troma's marquee character that somehow manages to stay true to his cinematic roots, even without all the copious violence and nudity." So if that sounds like a winner to you, you might want to read the comic. Toxie did get a catchphrase specifically for the comics. It was the gibberish word Omgawa. And maybe they thought that could be the next Cowabunga or something. But spoiler, it wasn't.
We could still make Omgawa happen, don't worry.
According to the one and only Toxic Avenger comic reviewer who may have ever lived, quote, "The highlight of the series has to be the Souvlaki Sewer Syndrome two-parter in issue 7 and 8. In this mini-arc, the chairman concocts a wild plan to turn half of New York into irradiated sewer-dwelling zombies via tainted Souvlaki, with the hideous creatures eventually pulling together into a mammoth wad of rotting adipose tissue," end quote. So hopefully that paints a picture for you, and that is your comic book connection for the Toxic Avenger.
And if anyone is interested in buying the first issue of the Toxic Avenger put out by Marvel, one sweet Shanzi from the internet is the proud owner of it. Oh, yeah. In 1991, don't forget, that was the huge comic book speculation market.
Oh, yeah.
And this fella here, if it had a number 1 next to it,
we all bought it.
My word, I'm buying that. What is that, to use your poll earlier, Bruce? Is that Monchichi's number 1? Absolutely. I'm going to get that. Anything with number 1. And so Toxic Avenger was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'm scooping that one up.
It even says on the cover, like, amazing collectible first issue or something.
Oh, yeah. It says collectors right on it.
You know, the ones that always say that put on the cover collectible first issue, number 1 mega, whatever. You know that book is going to go hardly anywhere in value for the most part.
Except because I'm staring right now at the Savage She-Hulk number 1, and it says, and a big blue button, just so you know, number 1 collector's item issue.
Oh, my word.
And I spent way too much on it, so they were right.
So you did pay cover price? No, just joking.
Whoa.
I don't know why I threw shade for no reason towards a comic I like.
So to get to this movie, thoughts?
I got a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there is an answer to this question. But where does the word trauma come from? Like how did Lloyd Kaufman land on trauma?
The floor is yours, Portress.
I wish I knew the actual meaning of that. Now, I will say, trauma. This movie, though, I can say this. This movie is the first place to be called Tromaville. This is the first time that we actually see that, and then Tromaville becomes a kind of a city unto itself. The mythical,
brand.
Exactly, the mythical world that we often see in DC, where it's like it's not quite this place, it's not this place, it's Tromaville.
It's clearly just outside of Manhattan.
It's in New Jersey in this movie.
I know the word trachoma, which is severe corneal scarring due to chlamydia, so I didn't know if it was related to that somehow.
I'm sure Lloyd got it in the war.
That's the first thing everybody goes to, Bruce. Talk about hacky.
You guys remember about chlamydia? No, it's terrible. But go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. I've watched this movie. This is probably the second time I've seen it because I have seen it before. And I can remember the first time I saw it, I was like, this is not nearly as bad a movie as I thought it was. Like I remember distinctly thinking to myself, because the movie's terrible, but you go into it and your expectations are so low that when you watch the movie, you're like, huh. Like I found myself doing that even again, watching it, just today, where there's certain moments in this movie where you're like, that was done well, a couple of times.
I think he's absolutely right, because we have a thought in our head as to what trauma is, especially if you haven't watched a decent amount of trauma or you've only seen, bits and pieces here and there. You have an idea of what stuff is in your head, and that these guys are super low rent and there's no talent involved. There is certainly talent involved in these movies. It's just weird. Because that's the biggest thing. It's really odd. There are a lot of storytelling things that, especially when you watch this movie, because it goes a bit into the kind of Lloyd Kaufman era and everything. This was the first time that they decided to go and do some more horror type stuff, because according to what Lloyd said, he saw a thing in like Variety or the Hollywood Reporter, something like that said horror is dead. And his mantra is, well, if they say this, I'm going the opposite direction, because that's the kind of person Lloyd Kaufman is. So he said, you know what? I'm going to do horror. Previously, him and hers had been doing a whole bunch of just kind of sexy teen comedy kind of sort of stuff. There's like one with a remote control where you can make ladies stop and do sexy stuff with a remote control and whatnot.
Whoa, just yowza.
Really goofy kind of stuff.
What's the catchphrase from the Marvel comics?
Ungawa.
Those are some sexy ladies.
So they were doing all that stuff, and they decided, let's get into this horror thing that apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, is dead.
And this was released 2 years after the Swamp Thing movie, the Wes Craven Swamp Thing. I think that's got as much to do with it as a newspaper headline.
Well, let's be honest here. There's a lot of Lloyd that is that song and dance showman. He is the Harold Hill of low rent, movies and stuff like that.
I kind of picture him as one of the, like The Interview might be fun to watch for you or me, but I picture him to be annoying as heck to ever have as a guest or to ever try to talk to.
Well,
have you seen that documentary, The Last Blockbuster? Have you seen that documentary?
Yes, I have.
I'll be talking about that on the Film Find coming up. Check it out.
And Kaufman's on there, and he hates Blockbuster so much that they even put the amount of seconds the Lloyd Kaufman interview is going to be, and it's like 32 seconds or something like that. Yeah. Because he hates them so much that he's like, I'm glad they're dead.
Yeah, Lloyd's never had a nice thing to say about almost anybody from what I've seen. I've met him.
He really hates the guilds.
Yeah, well,
he's like, they kicked me out just because I kept making non-union films once I had a union membership. What's up with that?
Well, it's even worse than that, because there are some times where he just goes, all of a sudden Hollywood comes along and they decide to do what we do, and they have the leg up because they hire good actors and they have money and talent for this stuff. And I'm like, Yeah, I guess that's cheating according to how you think about it, but that's
just
kind of
because they quote make movies the right way, end quote. Just because they quote have health insurance, end quote.
You don't need any of that. But here's the thing, not for nothing, Lloyd had like this crazy loyal crew that was around for like ever, just, and that's why really the progress of the movies stayed kind of the same.
Maybe they were around
life.
forever because once you made a trauma movie, nobody else would touch you. Like, that works a couple different ways sometimes.
Well, and then you have your James Gunns, so who knows?
You're right. And you watch going through the filmography today of Troma and the guys who worked on this movie, you see that they all do move up in status from movie to movie. Like the guys who are the lower tier guys in the 70s are now directing movies in the 80s for Troma, things like that. And it's a good process if you're willing to be poor and work all the time, 16-hour days, to eventually get those credits, like somebody like James Gunn was.
Yeah, and there's a lot of he's kind of, I would say Lloyd is like a bit more of a compassionate Roger Corman. Roger Corman didn't quite care for people that much. Roger Corman stepped on a lot of people and just didn't pay a lot of people. Kaufman does that to a degree, but Kaufman also, at least, while he doesn't pay people really, he at least takes care of them enough. He's not like wildly
gives them like thoughts and prayers and claps for them and stuff.
No, he gives them the opportunity to be able to make a movie eventually if you work for him long enough.
I guess that's nice.
And that's the difference between those two people.
Yeah, and
Roger Corman wants the kid from NYU, not pay him anything, and bring him in to direct his movie, whatever movie he's got that's going to be a knockoff of something else that you just saw.
But I guess just from the product that they make, I'm way more in Corman's wheelhouse than the Troma wheelhouse.
Sure.
Well, yeah, sure. And you're a higher brow kind of fellow as well. You're going to look at the Poe stuff and go like, yes, this is what I want. Whereas this is the trash gutter. I remember
distinctly you drinking wine, Bruce, while you were watching the Hasselhoff.
Yes,
Nick Fury, and you were like, "No, this
has
criminally underrated that movie. Criminally underrated.
Totally perfectly rated.
Appropriately so.
Yes." And right off the bat, you kind of know. Can we get into the movie?
Yeah,
you guys,
please.
So, right off the bat, you kind of know what kind of movie, what era you're in for.
No, I thought this could have been a modern day thing that happened. Well, 6 weeks ago.
The main reason why is because they have what might be the world's greatest opening song to a movie with the movie Body Talk.
Oh yeah,
and every line is body talk, body talk, body talk, body. And it's just perfect. And you got those synth keyboards, and it's exactly what you think an 80s movie is.
It's hyping you up. You're going through this fitness club. You're seeing all of these people. And it is one of the things that I like about this movie is that it feels like a weird time capsule of the 80s that didn't quite exist, but existed in this weird Troma universe and everything. This is what the 80s was like in Tromaville, if you will.
Yes.
And also, when I'm watching this movie, I couldn't figure out whether Lloyd Kaufman really, really hated fitness clubs or really loved them. It's got that weird, it's one or the other, I know, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
I think that
he's definitely not indifferent about them.
He's definitely never been in one because there's characters smoking in the fitness club as they're working out. So probably not a lot of life experience in there.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I'd say a gym in North Carolina in the mid 80s would have had smokers because I remember people smoking in the aisle of the grocery store.
Speaking of which, speaking of North Carolina, Lloyd Kaufman's wife from Charlotte.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw a picture of her. She's a lovely lady.
Yeah, she has been by his side forever and everything, and she is kind of the grease that makes all that production run and everything. Lloyd's the crazy guy and the big kind of seller and stuff, but she really is a lot of the brains behind the production.
I saw her on the last drive-in. when they did Troma War.
yeah,
They had
yeah.
her and Lloyd on there, and the only thing I could think is that is the most patient, saintly woman in the world. Either that or Lloyd's a big phony, and he's not really like
Because you
this.
can tell when Lloyd starts to go off on his little jags about this, that, or the other. You can just see her just going like, well, he's going to peter out at some point. We'll just let him go. Just let him have
I
it.
would imagine that being around Lloyd Kaufman is a lot like being around you, Adam, where, you know, as long as you don't hit certain topics or you're just going to go off and, you know, like take a nuclear missile to somebody's face.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be just fine. But with Lloyd Kaufman, he might have more of those topics than you. Like one of those things, you know?
Yeah.
Like, here are the 12 things you never talk about around Lloyd Kaufman, you know, like that kind of thing.
I feel like Lloyd Kaufman's the kind of guy where you could say, what's your favorite bagel? And he'd say, you know, you can't even get good bagels anymore because trade unions have ruined bagels. You know what the Guild did to me, that big trade union? He kind of feels like he would be that guy, shoehorn in.
There's a lot of, yeah,
He's got to
exactly.
say.
Exactly. There's a, he will pepper those things in as needed as soon as he possibly can, because it's like, dude, this has nothing to, I mean, I grant you your argument. Yes. That has zero to do with what we're talking about. You just derailed us to have this lovely little moment of your pissed offness and everything. Okay, that's great. Can we go back to what we were talking about here instead of your, 5-minute dissertation on things that you don't enjoy? Okay.
So can you guys tell me something here, just speaking in an overall general term? Because the thing I can't figure out about this movie, and usually movies are busy beating you over the head with what they're trying to tell you, you know, what their point is. I don't really get the point of this movie. Like, what is the thing just under the surface that they're trying to tell you?
I'd love to hear Bruce's interpretation, because I think I know a decent enough about, the man in the myth.
I'm probably going to disappoint you because I've got a cynical point of view. I think that it's not about anything other than just kind of like exploitation. Mm-hmm. I think that he will, after the fact, try to put something in there. I mean, of course, the guy hates politicians and corporations. That's
right.
That if only there was a union boss in this movie, his trifecta would have been there. So he's going to poke at them in every movie he makes. But that's more like the stand-up comic who just makes jokes about his ex-wife all the time. It's not really like he's got a theme. He just hates that lady. But I really think it's about trying to turn $600,000 into $2 million. That's all that I think it is.
Well, he definitely did that.
Yeah. I mean, this is the franchise that caught on.
Yeah.
And you said that you watched it and you're like, oh, it's actually pretty good at times. And when I watched it and I see a few moments where something's done well, relatively speaking, I just get angry that they didn't try harder for the whole movie.
Yeah, I think Lloyd is he's a guy who just, like you said, he wears it on his sleeve. Like there's no hiding what he's doing. He's not going to hit you with some sort of subtle undercurrent of a message or anything. He's going to smack you over the face in it. When listening to the audio commentary for this movie, there's a point where Toxie's walking out of his little camp there and everything, and in all this toxic sludge, there's the non-biodegradable, containers from McDonald's. Remember when they had those back in the day?
Yeah.
They have those on the ground, and then a book by Nixon. Like, this is how I'm like, the man is as subtle as a hand grenade.
Well, that's why I mean that there really isn't an overall like undercurrent in this movie. And usually, because this is like a comedy horror superhero like hybrid thing, usually when you get that horror element into something, there is the subtext of what they're trying to tell you. And there isn't really any subtext.
His is
here.
mostly
I think his theme was, I wonder what her chowder buckets look like. Okay. Now I wonder what her chowder buckets look like.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
let's see if we can. I wonder what it would look like if a pretend blind lady's thigh was exposed.
Now, not for nothing, everyone that was in this movie that does anything that you see in this movie was 100% game for it. And I'll tell you the difference. The blind lady that we speak of did not, it was written in the script to have nudity. She did not want to do it. They said that's perfectly fine and wrote around it. I mean, there's a sex scene in this movie where both characters are fully clothed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
like he does listen to people. There was a moment on the street when our little Melvin gets all kind of toxed up there and everything, and everybody's screaming around him. He actually told Lloyd, this according to Lloyd, of course, but he says, listen, I feel like I'm kind of being exploited and stuff right now. I don't really want to. I don't want to do this anymore. And they wrapped for the day. They stopped shooting.
I do not believe that.
I
at
don't.
all.
I sort of. I'm half on the fence. I'm
There's
sure there's
no
some
way.
There's some gray
There's no
area
way.
in there somewhere.
There is literally no way. Oh, are you having a hard time? Oh, okay, then we're wrapped here. There's no way that
Maybe they
happened.
wrapped him and then shot other stuff. I mean, that's
Sure.
possible.
Well, if you notice, they wrapped him for the movie. Maybe that's when he got sent home.
Well,
Like maybe originally the script had it being like an Incredible Hulk Bruce Banner thing, and he was going to turn back to Melvin for a few scenes. He's like, nope, not that squirt.
Now here's some sad stuff. He actually helped, kind of write some of the stuff that was going on in this movie. The guy that played Melvin, and they wanted him back for the sequel, but this is going to break your heart. He wanted $50 more, and Lloyd said no.
Wow.
Wow.
To his credit,
Real class act.
To his credit, Lloyd today says he made a mistake and that he should have paid.
Thank you, Lloyd.
So, not for nothing, you did drop the ball big time for a cool $50. It's not like he said, I'm a huge star now. I need to have $100,000 from a paycheck. $50 increase.
And Lloyd makes low budget movies, but in that same blockbuster documentary, we've seen where he lives. The guy has made a profit. So he could afford $50 for the poor guy.
Yeah, living in a brownstone in New York.
Not just
he's
New
doing
York,
fine.
in Manhattan, man.
Yeah, he's doing just fine.
I think, I'm not sure about now because he is, from what I remember seeing, that he may have to move out because he's been one of these guys that's been in New York since, forever and a day. But I think he may have lost his New York office recently and stuff. So it's not always on the up and up for the guy.
I think maybe he didn't pay his rent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was because he wasn't in a position he could have if he'd planned appropriately or something.
Beats me. Like I said, there's so much there that becomes myth and myth becomes legend and stuff like that. And given the fact that, we're looking at, 30 years ago.
I don't know how many ways the trauma pie gets chopped up, but the Toxic Avenger stuff alone, and maybe he's lost some of that by making, putting it back into his productions to some degree, but he's got to have about a $15 million return on it. You know what I mean? Like above and beyond, like a net out of just the Toxic Avenger stuff and licensing and everything, right?
Well, you'd think so because now they're going to make a new Toxic Avenger movie.
Yes, I'm kind of excited when you hear the names involved. Like what little bit is there already?
I'm already picturing Jack McBrayer as Melvin.
First of all, that wouldn't be a horrible choice.
That's pretty great.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of in love with that.
Would it be like when they do the studio films of the John Waters movies and they totally don't get it?
Yeah, and honestly, this is another kind of avenue, if you will, for the kind of, Waters aesthetic and stuff like that. If you look at Waters stuff, not if you discount some of the early stuff, but it's a lot like Troma in there's talent there. It's just weird and abstract and super odd from what you're normally used to seeing.
Well, the difference also is that John Waters has a voice, right?
Very much so.
And instantly when you're watching something that has Waters dialogue in it. Like there's almost no difference between John Waters writing Pink Flamingos and John Waters writing Serial Mom. I mean, you can tell that it's John Waters who's writing it.
And even in stuff like Hairspray, where it's just there's a lot of things that are very John Waters in that, and that's a PG musical for heaven's sake.
Yeah. So you want me to go to my notes and then we can start talking about it?
I just have one more kind of general statement is a lot of times, particularly in the past year when I had extra time on my hands, I was going on Shudder watching 80s horror movies. And I was always thinking wow, they really kind of, as a rule, have not the greatest actors in the bulk of the roles in these 80s horror movies. And then I need something like this to remind me those people were actually better than I thought, because this has some really, really like this has a lot of let's just do it in one take and that'll be fine stuff.
Sure.
Or at least if it really feels like your friends from junior high making a Star Trek movie in the gym.
I just like to say that everyone is making interesting choices.
And the thing I like about this movie, even though it's awful, and it is awful, but one of the things that I really like about it is that it's never boring. It's not a boring movie. It's not something where it just feels like it's taking forever to get through this thing. I never felt that way.
There's always a weird little thing that's right around the corner to make you go like, wait, what are we watching again? This is bananas.
Yeah. The real, because I had reached a point. I know you say it never got boring for you guys, but I had reached a point where I felt like, okay, they've made the joke and they're just like making that same joke. We need to move into another act. And it's not a long movie, 75 minutes or something. And just when I was really needing something new to happen is when Mrs. Haskell or whatever her name is, that whole thing goes down. And it had me reinvested in the film. I'm like, that is really odd that he just randomly, first off, great casting, when you can't get Zelda Rubinstein, you get Mrs. Haskell. But it's like, okay, so the Toxic Avenger's chasing this small lady around a dry cleaner. And then later, it's revealed she also had some criminal activities, but I really thought maybe he had broken pure evil there.
And the funny thing is this lady was put in this movie because she was in a previous trauma film of which she was so happy because she wasn't treated as a little person. She'd done a lot of acting and stuff like that, but it's always, we're hiring you specifically because you're a little person to play this quote-unquote little person role. In her trauma role there, she was just treated as any other actor would be. So she was super excited to come back and do some more stuff. And she came back, did this movie, and then never really picked up the phone again when trauma called because she was just like, not for nothing. I appreciate not having, that stereotype and everything put on me and label me and put me in this little box and everything. But I'd rather not do whatever that is.
I don't need the $25 that you're going to pay me, Lloyd Kaufman.
No, we're good.
Have either of you seen the director's cut of this movie? I was trying to look up that cast member's name and I can't find it, but I found another interesting cast member that's listed as only in the director's cut.
I think what you're thinking about, I can confirm. What do you got there? Because I think I may speak. Well,
this almost sounds, I'm just looking at Wikipedia, not IMDb, and it almost sounds like a joke that Lloyd Kaufman went on and put on Wikipedia himself. But it says Marissa Tomei is in the director's cut.
Now, supposedly, Marissa Tomei actually said this in an interview. That's what I'm to understand, is that she was the one that said that. And I'd heard Lloyd Kaufman say that in the audio commentary and everything. I rewound back and watched pretty darn closely at everything. If she's in there, I can't see her or cannot recognize her. I don't believe that to be true.
I mean, when you're the producer and the director, do you really need a director's cut? Like, didn't he have final cut on what went to theaters?
No, you'll be surprised. You remember when they beat up the old lady? They had to cut that to get an R rating.
Wow.
For some reason,
they were R rating.
Yeah, well, they were. The cut version
feels like drive-in unrated to me.
Well, and trust me, Lloyd. If you that's another picadillo. If you'd like to get Lloyd going for a cool 20 minutes, ask him about the ratings board.
Oh my God!
And he will go off, and you will never see him again. You'll be like, okay, all right, I get you. I agree with you. It's all good. Can we go for the love of everything? Let's move on to another topic. I agree. Let's go. He's just that kind of guy.
Did he have his own distribution? Like, I mean, this is obviously drive-in movie stuff. So I know there's like drive-in movies had their own distribution thing back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But like, there's a trailer for this movie that you played, and I can't imagine the scenario in which you get to show a trailer for this movie.
What if I told you that this movie itself not only played at Cannes, but was also bought at Cannes by the French, and the French only?
Those wacky French.
That's the legend to be believed, is that the only people that were down with it were the French, and later on they would have to kind of. I'm not sure what the distribution was like. I'm not a huge trauma devotee. I was always kind of the guy. I think trauma was what kind of got me on the block of I don't particularly care about horror, especially like in the kind of late teens, early teens rather, where I was just like, no, I'm too smart and too intelligent for horror films, because I figure they were all like Trauma. And like that's not what the majority of horror films are. The majority of films aren't like that. They're very, very different. And so I think trauma in their ilk is what put me off of horror films for so long. Well, first being a scaredy cat when I was a kid, but then when you got over the scaredy catness, it was more like the artistic snootiness in me that was just like, I don't want to see this sort of stuff. And I didn't see this kind of stuff for a very long time. I actually had friends in school, in film school, who were super big trauma fans, like ridiculously so. And I could not for the life of me wrap my mind around why anyone would really enjoy this stuff. And I've
So you get it now?
I get it now. I've watched Toxic Avenger at least 3 or 4 times now. I understand what the appeal is and everything. You don't see it in this movie, but there's a time later in the trauma, universe and everything, where they shot this one big giant car wreck and everything. And Lloyd Kaufman, the cheapskate that he is, and honestly smart if you want to think about it like that as well, he reuses that car crash in like 10 different movies. The exact same car crash, but they always set it up in there. And granted, it's a magnificent car crash where this car just goes flying through the air and does like a barrel roll and everything and blows up, and it is amazingly cool. So I can't blame him for going like, man, we got to use this thing as much as we possibly can because it cost a buttload of money. And that's also for fans of trauma where they watch back and like they love seeing that. Like that's a big thing. Oh, there's the car flip that we all knew was coming. There's the kind of canned special effects that we've seen that they did way back when, paid a whole bunch of money for, and couldn't put more into this time. But we make this film look bigger and better with the thing that we've already paid for, 5 times over at this point. But for me, the biggest thing is that I at least am able to see this movie for what it is, and honest to God, the hustlers that these guys are. To me, that's always been.
That's the part that surprised me most watching it this time, is that, like performances and subtlety aren't big on the menu here.
Yeah.
But what is on the menu is really good stunt work, especially when they hit the kid on the bike. I mean, clearly that's not a child that's on the bike when the car hits it. But
it comes to a full adult man that's in there that's like 5'2".
Yes, but I also did not expect to see somebody get hit by a car and roll off of the hood. I fully expected to see cut mannequin, fall over, kid on ground, Yeah. And that isn't what we got. We got super slow-mo, pan in. Let's see the guy roll off of the car. I thought it was awesome.
During some of the stunts, though, I got a little concerned because I started thinking like this could potentially be the kind of production where the people doing the stunts aren't actually stunt people and safety precautions aren't properly in place. So I was even worried about the guy getting ice cream and milk poured in his mouth. That was like a choking hazard for just your run-of-the-mill actor who's desperate to work in a trauma film. But thank goodness nobody died that I know of in the making of this picture.
Now, again, all of these words come from Lloyd, so take them with that in mind. But his thing is that he definitely wants a safe set and wants no one to get hurt and everything. And according to things that are around his office and things that they say all the time, is like safety and everything was their number one priority with stuff. And they had a big giant problem with one. They hired this company who, had this reputation as a decent enough special effects place that was able to do these stunts and stuff. So when the final car is flying off of that big embankment and everything,
right?
They were like, okay, what we need you to do is put in, a roll bar here because this thing's going to go and tip over and stuff, and we got to make it safe. Well, apparently the person that they hired was a complete and utter dum-dum, and put it on the ground, put it on the floorboard of the car.
Oh, no.
So they saw that crash and they were like, oh, okay, well, we might have just killed this man. And because of the people that they hired they came recommended, but apparently sometimes you need to pay a little bit more for those stunts.
I'm gonna guess that this dum-dum is work cheap too. Like this, the guy that puts the roll bar in upside down is not getting top dollar.
I would imagine that the person that's making the most money besides Lloyd Kaufman on this movie is the stunt guy, like the stunt coordinator guy. because it's the only thing that they really put money into, because you could see that they have, whether they're wrecking cars or setting people on fire, because the fire stunts look great too.
The fire stunts are really good. If you look at one of the shots when the cop gets his hands caught on fire,
I was worried for that guy too.
There's an over the head shot where some of that fire actually falls down on Melvin when he's like riling on the ground and everything, which was not supposed to happen.
Probably not. So you'd imagine that he probably put money into that. And maybe that's it. There's a couple of things on this show too that I found fascinating. Like, hey, we need to give the Toxic Avenger something that is iconic to wear, so it's the first thing that you think of when you think of Toxic Avenger. Well, we can't get him a suit because the suit is going to be something ridiculous. Let's put him in a tutu.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's really smart. That's the stuff that, like, what this reminds me of is a lot of that Australian stuff that came out in the 70s, where it's just really interesting and cheaply made, and 90% of it is awful, but when it's good, you get Mad Max.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this reminds me of.
And speaking of that tutu, they had the guy when he goes to jump out of the window and then into the toxic barrel there and everything. When the guy was going for the stunt, just before he went and jumped, they stopped him and they were like, "He's not wearing the tutu."
Oh wow!
So apparently they were people were very, very mad because it was just like, dude, I almost did this. You got to figure all this stuff out. I'm the one who's just jumping out. Get it on me and make sure that everything's right before you send me out there to do it. And don't call me back in when I'm like 75% of the way there, because the amount of adrenaline that you got to build up to be like, well, I'm going to smash out of this, fake plate glass window here and everything and out into the, street, which I'm sure he didn't jump right into the barrel. They had some sort of pads and stuff out there for him, one would hope. But no, they were just like, oh yeah, it's always just kind of last minute, skin of your teeth kind of thing. It's a trauma production.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think of the mask, the prosthetics, whatever, the facial makeup? I
remember them being worse than they are. They just get worse later, right? Because in this one they're pretty good, but in the follow-ups they get progressively worse, right? It's kind of like Freddy Krueger.
Well, I almost wonder if Toxic Avenger got enough of a following by the time they were making like the third or fourth one that Lloyd could just go out and buy like a Halloween mask and just use that for his production.
That's a really good question. I bet you he could.
And that would make the quality go down significantly.
Yeah.
It's just what was available there at the Midnight Express or whatever those Halloween stores are called.
Yeah. And he saved the receipt so he could take it back after the movie or something.
Yeah, this one of the big things to me still that just drives me absolutely bonkers with this is the dubbing of the Toxic Avenger's voice.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I think that adds 20% to the movie. I love it so much.
So all over the place.
That really, to me, feels like me and Adam trying to fix a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh God, I love it so much because it's so obviously ADR that it's wonderful. It's almost like Darth Vader's voice to me.
According to Lloyd, with the first time that they showed this to a paid audience and everything, when they heard that voice come in, everybody just died laughing because no one suspected that was coming. Of this just kind of like, hey, everybody, like really. But then sometimes it goes out of that, and then the voice will go up, and it's all over the place. And
it is all over the place for sure.
And I think the first time I watched this movie, I was confused because I'm just like, whose voice is that? What are we doing?
I thought that was like Blade Runner voiceover or something at first. Like I didn't think it was supposed to be something you could hear in world.
Yeah, because sometimes then we'll come to actual stuff that was, sounds at least like on-set dialogue that was actually recorded when they're having that little, intimate moment where they're talking back and forth. You go like, oh, that's what his real voice sounds like. And literally 3/4 of a second later,
they'll have the tight shot that's just Toxic Avenger's face saying the line and it sounds fine. But that also, was like I'm convinced there was a first cut of this in which the Toxic Avenger only grunted and then it just didn't work.
No, I wouldn't be completely shocked at that. I mean, 3/4 of the movie, we're playing the "you're just going to look at the back of my head" game, which is kind of hilarious. But at the same time, too, it sort of works because we hide his face up until that big reveal and everything. So as goofy and stupid and just out of place as it is, it kind of still works.
Yes, it does, but I mean, it works because part of the joy of some of this is how much it doesn't quite work. Like that's part of the fun of it, I think, for people.
Yeah.
The problem is that the parts that are well done, it's like, I don't know. It's like, they could have done better. And to me, it makes me a little aggravated. Like they should have either just ran with the absolute 100% schlock all the way through, or they should have, because some of it's not even a money issue. Some of it I feel like is just like, let's get a couple more takes. Let's just try a little harder. Let's tune this one up and this one down.
Well, you got to remember, man, you're burning film here at this point. So every tiny little bit, helps.
Yeah, that is true.
They're always telling you.
You are burning film. I kind of forget that. It's so easy to forget now in our digital era.
And they're stealing short ends from other places and stuff like that to just try to get any leftover little bits of film that haven't been developed and putting all of those things together. So that's how all these low budget things work, is they're scrimping and saving every little, tiny place that they can just to, one would hope put it back into the production and not their pocket. But who's to say what happens with money?
Well, because you can't put the money in on the back end. So if you are scrimping on production, it is going in on your pocket if it's successful.
Well, one of the things that they do well here is that they clearly blocked everything out in the gym and things like that, because when you're watching super cheesy, terrible movies like this, a lot of the time there's so much footage that they shoot where it's like, oh, guy gets out of the car, walks into, like, you see every moment of that because they just need it to be long enough to be considered a movie. Yeah. And they don't have any of that in this movie. And it's because they clearly blocked out what they were going to do before they ever shot it, instead of just like, okay, so let's shoot something here. Like, there was a lot of thought before they made the movie put into the movie, which actually makes for a cheaper production. Like, the more prep you do, the more money.
Yeah, they say that they rehearsed a whole bunch and everything. They rehearsed pre that, and then before, once they got on the set and they were kind of scouting stuff and everything, they would rehearse there as well. So all of these people were very well rehearsed coming into this, and I think you can definitely see that they planned stuff out. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I'm sure they didn't want to do more than probably 2 or 3 takes per thing, just because time and money. I mean, literally the two things that you never have enough of in making movies, especially in low budget movies.
Just kind of in life in general. I mean, movie making's just a microcosm of that, but time and money are both. If you've got a whole lot of one, you probably don't have any of the other.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on here, and I just it feels honest for what he does. It feels like this is coming out of him, that like, hey, I've seen all these other things. There's so many little different, like you said, from like your Swamp Thing to the little romantic comedy stuff. There's so many things that he clearly just pulls from other stuff, throws it into this kind of cheap blender here and everything. And if you're just the right amount of trailer trash, this will appeal to you so hardcore that. But I like it too. And again, I think I like it more as the years kind of go on. And I'll suggest this to anybody as well. It was for a movie that happened a little bit later, I think probably somewhere in the late 90s. But everybody remembers the Francis Ford Coppola documentary Hearts of Darkness, which is about the making of Apocalypse Now. Yeah. So they had Troma and Lloyd Kaufman directed this movie called Terror. Is it Terror Firmer? Something like that. Terror Firmer. It's a play on that. And but they did a documentary about the making of that called Farts of Darkness.
Of course.
And if you really want to get kind of a behind-the-scenes look, a little bit later than this era, of course, but still I think very much what it was like working, on a Troma movie, I definitely recommend seeking that documentary out, because it's enlightening.
Yeah, I would imagine that you get to see the process of how, because like Bruce says, They clearly are shooting a lot of things one take, especially all the shots that they're stealing.
Oh, tons. And they even talk about it in the documentary where, like, you know, they have a naked guy standing out there in Times Square or whatever, and they show you how we stole this shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just say this: if you've never, I'm surprised this caught on like it did. First off, I'm just going to say I can see where it might have some appeal, but I'm surprised that the franchise became a Saturday morning cartoon show and that kind of stuff.
That part's crazy.
Yeah.
But during that time period, you've got like the RoboCop cartoon and the Rambo cartoon, and it's all very strange.
Yeah, the 80s were a super odd spot. You'd see, like, you know, toys for Terminator 2 and stuff like that, where you're like, why are we marketing this stuff to children?
But also, though, I mean, Terminator and Rambo, it was kind of weird that they had cartoons, but those also really caught on mainstream big time, too. Like, this had a nice return on investment, but it's nowhere close to the box office on either one of those.
No, but also you can get the license to the Toxic Avenger for a whole lot less than you can get those other two licenses for. So that's why they probably did it. Also, it seems like kind of a slam dunk. Hey, there's this superhero that's sort of already like RoboCop, and he was made a couple years before that. Like, I mean, it's the same. It's like he's Frankenstein, but he's a superhero. Like he can like, we can do the thing like we did with Shrek. You know, like it has that all of those same beats to it. It's just done so poorly that like that's the thing that you find head scratching.
Yeah, and like in the late 80s and early 90s and stuff, we're getting into more of an environmentally friendly kind of mindset and stuff like that. So things like Toxic Avenger and Captain Planet and all that kind of stuff, that was starting to be kind of a buzz thing where people were just like, oh yeah, well let's this is about nuclear waste and things like that. And it was on the tips of people's tongues. So it kind of made sense. And, you know, ultimately, if you take a lot of the crude stuff out of this and a lot of the mega violence and stuff like that, it is kind of stupid, kid-friendly sort of stuff. If you just take out all the bad junk, you know?
It really kind of is. And it seems like just an easy layup to have the Toxic Avenger and Captain Planet together join forces.
Yeah. I don't know why we don't see that happen. Yeah. Oh, did you know so in the fight in the Mexican restaurant, which is I think just called like That Mexican Restaurant or something like that, whatever the name is in the movie, that's the actual name of the Mexican place.
That's great.
Did the Mexican restaurant actually have samurai swords on the wall?
That was literally the next thing out of my mouth is I'm not sure why it would have samurai swords on there, but they did do that. Now the guy who had like the half face paint and everything, this will give you a little bit of joy in your heart, knowing that not the entire world is heartless. But the guy with the half face paint and everything, who ends up pointing a shotgun at a baby, quit because he did not want to do that. He was just like, I can't point. I know it's fake. I can't point a shotgun at a baby. I can't do it.
That explains the shot where you just see the barrel of the gun in the direction of the baby. You don't see
he's
the guy
just like,
it.
I'm not gonna do that. And he quit over that. And the black guy who actually gets his arm ripped off, if you watch carefully, he never uses that arm because that guy did not have probably right arm, I think. At all. So like he was an amputee, and then when that got ripped off and everything, but yet it still looks, because they have the prosthetic under there to squirt out the blood and stuff, it still looks like he's hiding an arm, which is hilarious. It's like, well, that didn't do much now, did it? But if you watch, he's only hitting people with his left hand and everything because his right arm is gone.
So let me go
catch on to that.
Let me go to my notes here because I've got some notes.
Okay.
So first note, Jock sure hated nerds in 1984. Good Lord. The second he shows up, the guys just want to kill him. Like just by existing, they want to murder that guy.
I'm telling you, it all just feels like crazy, just coke rage, just fueling through these guys of just like, everything is like that. It's just like your butt is so tight, just screaming, I'm just gonna kill this guy. It's like you went from 0 to murder in 2 seconds.
The character of Slug looks like he could be Ashton Kutcher's father. The guy who smokes all the time.
Yeah, like a short version.
Yeah. And you know it's the 80s because dudes are smoking in the gym, which I already mentioned.
Oh, and that's how Lloyd told you that these were the bad guys because Lloyd abhors smoking, does not like it and everything, and said this is how you know that they're the bad guys.
I wouldn't have been able to figure it out without that.
Without them murdering people in the street for fun and then putting like the actual like little logos on the side of their car like it's a fighter plane where they knock down people.
The whole thing about keeping score when they hit people with their car, like that tells you where trauma is. Trauma is stealing ideas from Corman.
Well, he's stealing them from he's stealing from them and what's his name? From The Fly, Cronenberg. That's it. He's stealing from Cronenberg and stuff as well. So there's
stealing from Cronenberg and stealing from Corman are two very different thefts.
Yeah, they both have their moments, and I like it. But to me, it's so much fun to just watch how many stupid little things that they're taking. And I don't know, there is a stupid little charm about it. Sean, you got anything else?
Oh, I've got plenty.
Okay.
So Slug and his girlfriend are both sexually excited whenever they murder somebody with their car.
Oh, yeah.
And it sure is lucky that they found each other.
And that there's a lot of those
crash, the Cronenberg crash.
Yeah,
Okay, next up is Melvin is a pervert, but man, they sure do treat him poorly, but he is also a pervert. Both of these things are true.
Well, if you're in a trauma universe, I'm going to guess that everybody's at least 3/4 pervert.
I like the idea that the only thing that allows him to tell the difference in the feel of a sheep and a woman are the lights.
Okay, another fun story. That sheep was filled with ticks and lice and all kinds of stuff, and that's why he didn't want to kiss it. They were really mad at him because he didn't kiss it. Turns out that it was infested with lice and God else knows what.
My word.
That's what happens when you get the discount sheep wrangler.
You know? Couldn't give it a bath before you start making out with it.
Truckers snorting heroin from huge bags tracks with my own experience with truckers.
I love the quote. Hey, remember that time we snorted all that dope? Look.
I like how later on there's a drug deal that goes on, and this guy hands this drug dealer a $50 bill and gets back, like 4 or 5 joints. And then a lady hands him like $10 and gets 2 needles full of heroin. I'm like, I don't know that you guys know what drugs cost, but that's not how it works. Even in the 80s. Come on now.
Have you ever been so embarrassed that you jumped out of a 2nd floor window?
I've felt that way, but I've never actually acted on it. It's usually just one stories. I don't go to enough places. I don't go to enough high rises to jump.
The trans gang member, that is a bit problematic watching this movie now.
Hey, listen, Lloyd just says nobody else was doing it and we were doing it, and we just treated it like normal. Again, these are the words Lloyd says after the 20 years, but be that as it may.
Sure.
He's a pretty left wing kind of guy. He's a very liberal dude.
Okay.
I've heard him speak, so.
No, I believe him. I believe you also. I'm just saying that, 1984, you're making those jokes because it's funny.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying what Lloyd says. That's why I always have to kind of crib it. And that's like, here's what Lloyd says. I don't know the...
But I mean, shoot, man, you look at the first Bill and Ted's movie. That's a super problematic movie also. So... This movie also has the best character names ever. You got Cigar Face, Bozo, Knuckles, Nipples. Great character names.
Nipples is the best.
Cigar Face came when he just was like during in between scenes and stuff like that. He was lighting up a cigar, and then like Lloyd apparently gave him that nickname on the spot, and that became the character's name. That's how it works over there in Tromaville. They just go like, "Hey, what are you doing? You lighting a cigar? Oh, Cigar Face, that's your name."
Cigar Face, I got you.
But at the same time, too, I like that guy. He's a little over the top and crazy, but he has that kind of like, I am one of these, wild and crazy marauder kind of attitudes to him. So you buy it. And then when he comes back with a bandaged face, it's dope.
I'm pro this movie. I'm very pro this movie. You got to talk to the other guy. So my favorite scene is at the end where they're in the tent, and then you cut to their tent, and then you keep going wider with the camera, and there's tanks pointed at it, and there's the army, and there's just hundreds of onlookers, and they're all surrounding the tent. I just found that so funny. It's my favorite scene in the
And all they did was
also-
ask them. They just asked those guys over there, like they were in some fort in New Jersey or whatever, and just asked them
That
if they
is
all wanted
crazy.
to be in there. And they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Another scene I really liked was the circular firing squad, where all the gang members are in a circle with their guns, and Toxie jumps up and they all shoot each other. That's a great scene.
That's pretty great. All the kills, like there's a lot of really fun kills in this movie.
I mean,
And
people are
that's
getting
kind
their
of what you want in a revenge fantasy, you know?
hands frying off in the deep fryer. You got it wasn't done as well as it could, because at the movie theater we have like a milkshake maker where we make the proper milkshakes and everything. And man, if that blade went into your eye, you're talking bad news, son. I wish it was done a little bit better, because man, that could be pretty gruesome. But they only had so much money.
and I was already nervous about how much harm someone was suffering when that was filmed.
Well, most of the time you're just like, yeah, that's either a cantaloupe or a person's head. Whatever, we'll be cool. All right.
And that's it for my notes.
Now, before we get to our final review and recommendation here, we do have to ask ourselves one very important question, and I think I might know how this one pans out, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. We got to figure out how this movie relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Are you there, Sly? It's me, Sweet Chauncey. You may not remember, but you've met the producer of the movie, The Toxic Avenger. His name is Lloyd Kaufman, and he's famous for making terrible, awful, crap-ass movies. Have you ever asked yourself, who gave money to the guys who made Dolphin Man Battles the Sex Monsters, or Vampire Hooker Hotel, or a Stank-Mouth New Year's Eve special? That was all Lloyd Kaufman. He's got 4 more movies coming out in 2022 because movies are easy to make when you don't give a damn what they look like. Mr. Stallone, this will surprise you, but you've actually acted with Lloyd Kaufman twice. Once in your life-changing movie called Rocky, where he played the character called Drunk.
Nice.
And he's pretty well cast. So well cast, in fact, that they hired him again to play bar patron in Rocky IV, which everyone can agree is the finest of all the Rocky movies. Oh, yeah. I know it's not a great idea to bring up Rocky IV, because once you were asked to rate each of the Rocky movies in an interview, and out of 10, you gave Rocky V a 0. And that you agreed to do the movie out of nothing but greed. But, you know, we've all been there. Once I took a job with a guy I knew who I was going to hate him the second that I took the role anyway. And that guy's name might or might not have been Mickey Rourke. And there it is, Mr. Stallone. That's how you're connected to this movie. I hope to hear from you soon. This is the 353rd time we've tried this bit. I'll do better next week, I promise. Thank you. Your new best friend, Sweet Chauncey from the internet.
I kind of buried the lead a little bit because I obviously wanted to leave a little bit of room and everything. But the reason that they found the gym and that they got excited about this gym, because initially this movie was going to be called like Fitness Gym or Health Gym, something along those lines, whatever the name of the fitness place is. But they got this vibe when they because Michael Hers and Lloyd Kaufman worked on Rocky a little bit, just in some weird outside stuff like that. And they were in these gyms, and they were just like, gyms are the thing of the 80s. This is getting big. This is getting nuts. And they started writing this around that, based upon just really their experience in Rocky, just being in gyms.
Interesting.
Wild and crazy. All right, so let's get down to it. Here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to reddit.com/r/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top. Bruce, where does the Toxic Avenger fall in the Robin rating system for you?
You know, I've seen trauma movies before. I've seen a lot of schlocky movies, and I have a lot of fun with schlocky movies. And I expected this to be a schlocky movie, but I hadn't seen it before. And it's the thing where, like, I went in expecting it to be super schlocky, super low budget, and somehow it seemed even lower and schlockier in the first part. I mean, I was impressed with the prosthetic effects. I mean, not like they're gonna be earth-shattering or anything, but from what I saw before Melvin's transformation, I was impressed when Melvin transformed. But still, like, what makes a schlocky movie fun to me, like one of my friends was staying with me a few years back, and he had never seen or heard of the Peter Hooten Doctor Strange. So I pulled it up on YouTube. We sat down side by side at my desk. We watched it together, and we laughed, and we chat about it still. But if a friend came to visit and they said they'd never seen the Toxic Avenger before, I don't think I would feel like I needed to sit him down and watch it right then and there. Part of that's probably because, back when this was made, there were a lot of people who just liked it at face value for, people like the chowder buckets and, the off-color jokes. So I can't find the same kind of charm in it. I know a lot of people do. And I know it launched a franchise. Maybe I want to go see some of the other ones. I don't know. But yeah, I just didn't get into it, but I understand it has some charm to some people. I don't want to super lowball it, but it's going to be like the bottom end of the Damian Wayne. Like if you like it, you like it, but I'm not going to tell you to watch it.
I can understand that. Sean?
Oh man, I'm on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. I'm going all the way to high Damian Wayne.
Nice. We love a diversity of opinion.
I really do like this movie. It's, don't get me wrong, it is embarrassing at times. There is so much like just ridiculous nudity. There is, if you are trans or if you are gay or if you are any ethnicity at all, you are going to be offended by this movie, or at the very least be like, man, I can't believe that that dude is that racist. Like, because that's kind of the feel you get from it. I'm at the point now watching movies like this where I'm like, they did that for a laugh line. Like that was supposed to be funny, specifically with the trans gang member.
Yeah.
Like it's so bloody offensive. And I know that it was all done for laughs at the time. But with all that being said, I still really enjoy this movie for what this movie is, which is a terrible, terrible movie. And for me, it is a high Damian Wayne.
I think I'm going just slightly. Well, we're going to put slightly above you. We're going to put him at the bottom, Tim Drake, because I don't love this movie. I don't love everything about it, but there is something enough about this movie that is that low budget thing. There's so many people out there that talk about how they would like to make movies and do stuff and everything, and there's people that talk about it and there's people that do it, and like it or not, the results may vary from movie to movie and stuff, but Lloyd Kaufman did what Lloyd Kaufman did, and he's done it for quite some time now. Maybe not always the best of practices for a lot of those things, but he made it happen, and that's a lot more than I think many people can say, and he's kind of been dining out on it for ever since then. But I from what I've seen, from what I've heard him talk in person and person to person, because I did talk to him about at his booth and stuff. If you buy anything from him, he will talk to you. He will be your friend. And so I feel like he's a decent enough of a human being, at least certainly now, that you can look back on this stuff and you're right. There's a lot of things that are like, ooh, not super great. But it, to me, if you I don't know. Maybe it's just I've been hoodwinked by the man. But I look at it now and I just go like, yeah, it was the '80s and stuff like that. It doesn't feel like it's super horrible, malicious or anything like that. It's just in bad taste is all. But yeah, it's okay. But it's well enough, and I enjoyed myself watching it this time and kind of listening to some audio commentary and stuff as well. So yeah, thank you people at Patreon. You voted for this one, and I think we at least enjoyed it well enough. And Bruce, this was your first time, right?
Oh yeah, first time watching this.
So we all learned a little bit of something. So that will do it for this episode of Hero Movie Podcast. We'll talk about what we're doing next week in just a second here. But in the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Well, it's been an interesting week for my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out yet, go to youtube.com/c/Bruce Leslie. Got a new review up a new episode up about Wildfire of the Legion of Superheroes. And I've added a couple of more Demon Slayer videos because, if a horse is running well, you ride it till it drops dead. So I'm trying to do that. But I've had a real nice uptick in the traffic there. And I'm a minor celebrity in Japan now. So I'm happy about that.
Go into where the clicks are, man. That's all the internet's about, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, what else?
You can find more of our work at 30 Questions, our 30 Questions podcast, where we do 30 questions on all of the new Marvel and Disney Plus shows. that you care about if you're a nerd. And we just wrapped up on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but we have done all of The Mandalorian. We have done just a whole bunch of stuff and stuff that may surprise you. So check that out.
Yeah, we got the WandaVision's in that feed and everything as well. And we got Loki coming up in a little over a month and everything. So
remember we did the
times are
first
good.
season of Snowpiercer?
We did.
Oh, yeah, we did do that.
Yeah.
Even that's out there. And, of course, check out the Film Find. I had one Bruce Leslie on to talk this last week here.
Who's that?
Some jerk on the internet. I don't know. But we had a good time talking about that Demon Slayer movie and everything. I had no idea what it was going in. I don't think Bruce did either, but we ended up both liking it quite a bit. So check out
that's
that.
nice. I might check it out.
Check it out over at the Film Find, and I got more episodes and stuff dropping this week, so check all that good stuff out at the Film Find, wherever you find podcasts. Next week, we're going to be talking about the last half of Invincible. It wrapped up and everything, so you've now had a chance to catch up with all the final stuff. Next week, we'll talk about that, and it got renewed for 2 more seasons, so they're doing something right over there. So we'll be talking.
Fire.
We'll be talking about that next week. Until then, for Sweet Sean's and Kovacs on the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portras. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
I just wanna listen to your body talk.